I'd love to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity podcast for buying a business. We'll give you contact information at the end. Luke, do you know what the number one challenge in people buying a business is?
How do they find a business to buy?
Actually, it's not that.
Is it the financials?
Nope.
Oh, I don't know.
It's going to be consistency and discipline, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So, so people, especially this generation, are really big into immediate gratification. And so to build systems, even to show up for, I don't know, somewhere between 10 minutes and a half an hour a week out of 10,080 minutes, most people won't go the distance. So they'll attend one or two or three podcasts. So why are podcasts? Why is the internet so popular? Because you can go ahead and feel good and do nothing. So I can get the thrill of I'm going to be a business owner and I don't have to do anything. And so I don't know how to help people with that. And so, how to find a business. So there's a young guy in his early 30s, mid 30s, and I was helping him go ahead and look into buying a business. And I think, I don't know, he and I looked at maybe six, seven, eight businesses before he finally found one to buy. And so, um, if he had given up after two or three or four or five or six, you know, you don't get it until you got it. But each one of those situations that he looked into better prepared him to go ahead and be in a position to buy the final business. And he had been looking to start a business or buy a business for years, many years. He was working in a factory and and he actually got laid off from the factory. And he asked me, he says, do you think I ought to go get a real job? And he had done some stuff in real estate and he had done some stuff in accounting and taxes and stuff like that. And I felt that he was, ready to make the jump. And, he had a couple kids at the time. And so and I think his wife was pregnant. And so it was a pretty big jump of faith to go ahead and say, yeah, I'm just going to go full bore into starting my own company, or I'm going to go into full bore into, buying or both. And so, how do I find a business to buy? So here's some tips. One is you can look for a business broker, and so these are going to be, often, and I think different states have different regulations. A number of states, and maybe all states, I'm not sure if this is local or federal, but a number of states have, I think you have to have a real estate license to be able to sell a business. It's kind of interesting. So there's business brokers that you can go ahead and my oldest brother, who's a CPA, he and my two younger brothers bought a business, and then they bought another business. I think they bought a third business. And so the first business that they bought together, it was through a business broker. So you can find a business broker and they take a percentage off of the top. And, so it's like real estate and they find a business for you and you can go ahead and, you can do that. So one way is to find a business broker and they'll find it for you. There's also listings in different, like you can, businesses for sale, like a Zillow for businesses. I'm not sure what it is. And we might, we might go ahead and, have some links here around this podcast. We'll see on it where you could go in and sometimes it's free and then sometimes you subscribe to it and it'll have different types of businesses that you're looking for. Um, And so you can do that. Another way you can do it, another way you can do it is you can go ahead and pursue businesses before they go on the market, before they get a business broker. And so the business that my three brothers bought, the reason for that, well, I think one of the businesses that they bought, not the first one. The first one, they bought it, and then typically you have a 1 to 3 year where the owner sticks with the company and does 1 to 3 years working with you to transition everything over. That was the first business. And then I think after a year or two, the business owner died actually in their first business. The third business, I think it was that they bought, the owner actually died before, and his wife was left. And it was a pretty large company. I mean, and so you can go ahead and if you find people obviously in their 50s, 60s, at some point they're going to either have to sell the business or they're going to die, and then it's going to go into an estate. So if you can target, demographic groups, like a type of business. And so you can do that. So you can identify people that are going to be over 50 that own a company, and then you can target them. There's pros and cons to each of these, just like there's pros and cons to starting your own company versus buying a business. Another way you can do is you can work with professionals, like, somebody who specializes, maybe an attorney, or maybe a realtor, or maybe even a pastor of churches, like a pastor or minister. Like, they're going to know their congregation. They're going to know which businesses, who's one of their congregation, own companies and what age. So you could connect with pastors or influencers and say, do you know anybody that might be interested in selling a business? If you can get to the business before the business broker is, theoretically, you're going to not have to pay that fee and you'll get a better deal. But maybe not, because they're going to have access and expertise in that area. And so you might actually pay less with a business broker. So again, there's all different types of experiences there. So you can work with influencers, develop relationships with influencers, and then you can ask them and things will come up. So you touch base with them once a quarter or whatever, call them or send them something, email them something, send them something, just to remind them, hey, do you know anybody? I wanted to touch base again. Do you know anybody that's come up? So things are going to change on a regular basis. What about funeral? My uncle on my mom's side, he owned a funeral parlor, and so if people die, when people die, their attorney, accountants might be great referral partners too, because they can go ahead and they'll know some of their customers and what their situation is. Estate planning lawyers, they could be really good. So there's a whole bunch of different types of professionals that you could develop relationships with. This is why, I think hunting in packs, like what this is all about, is better. Because maybe, like for Luke example, he's doing all this work to find it. He finds somebody that's selling, but maybe he's not interested in that type of business, or he can't afford it, or it's not the right time, or whatever. And so I would recommend that you time block. You can make cold calls and pick up the phone, pick up a directory and call, just call businesses and say, are you interested? I've gotten a lot of direct mail. So that's another thing you could do. So I've gotten a lot of direct mail, or you could do email marketing to business owners and say, do you or somebody else are you or somebody else interested in selling your business? I get a lot of those. So there's so many different ways you can do it. Multiple, often you're going to try at least 3 different ways to do it. So lots of different options. The hard part is not this. The hard part is actually doing it. If you collaborate with 2, 3, 4, 20, 30, 40 people, if you collaborate with other people, whoever finds the opportunity, obviously they get the first crack at it, but they might not want it. And so they can dish it off to you or somebody else. So this is where I think hunting in packs is much wiser, um, from many, many perspectives. Luke, is that helpful for you?
Yes. Um, how do you like, so there's all these opportunities out there, but there's only one of me. What do you
Right.
do with that?
Well, I think the thing is you own a company now, and so you were 18 when you started this company. You're 20 now, and so you've got a huge advantage over almost any other 20-year-old out there. The amount of experience that you gained in Um, so for me, I own 9 companies. I've one of those I bought, the other ones I all started. So I tend to go ahead and be a starter of businesses, not a buyer of businesses. Um, but being part of this, I could see me buying a whole bunch of businesses. I mean, I could see that. And so if you're just one of you, well, if you're part of a group of people, now you're not just one. Now you're multiple. So a lot of employees, they're the one, they're interested in buying a business, but they still think like an employee. They don't think they think like an employee, but they do. Not totally like an employee, but not nearly as much as like a business owner either. So which would you rather, own? Would you rather own a company where you had 25% of the ownership or 100% of the ownership, Luke?
Probably depends on a lot of the conditions.
Right. It depends, right? Like, where would you make more money if you were, owning 50% of the business or 100% of the business?
It would all depend.
It depends, right? It depends, like how much profit is there, how much other. So it's interesting. So I'm 61 years old. I have 3 degrees in business. I have 40 years of business experience, international speaker and author. Um, so I've written 16 books, writing 17 and 18 right now. Um, and so vast amount of experiences. I mean, just it's crazy. Um, but when I go into a business, by and large, it's, if there's 2 people, it's 50-50. If it's 3 people, it's a third, and a third. If it's 4 people, it's 25%. And so, and I'm often going into business with younger people. So if I've got all of this experience and all of this other stuff, why am I willing to go ahead? I mean, why do I put them in an equal position that I'm in?
Is it because they can do the work?
A lot of it is like they're typically managing partners, and I'm going to be maybe the executive partner. And so they're going to go, if they're working in the business, so there's working on the business versus in the business. Working in the business, working in the business is actually doing the work. So they're going to make the money first and foremost because they're like an employee of their own business. So they're going to make money by working in the business, doing whatever they do. Working on the business is building a business. And so they're going to be making money far sooner than I will, probably. And so there's different roles. They're not better or worse. And so they're going to bring something. So if I don't feel, by and large, not, I wouldn't say this is always the case, but by and large, everything up to this point, if I don't trust the individual and feel that they're going to bring equal value, but very different than the value I bring. So most of them aren't even 30 or 40 years old. And so they're going to go ahead and bring a very different value than I bring. And if I don't feel that I can accomplish more with them than without them, then I shouldn't get into business with them. Make sense?
Hmm. How do you learn to bring the value that you bring to a business?
You mean me or,
Yeah.
well, me, I decided to go ahead and start my own companies when I was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. And then I gradually got bigger and bigger businesses, more and more, took more risk, you know, continued to take more and more risk, decided to go to college, get 3 business degrees and spend 5, 6 years in college doing that, acquiring knowledge from that. Um, and then, I did a lot of things I didn't like doing, like became an international speaker and author. I don't like to speak and I don't like to write. So I just love business, every kind of business. I just love business, and I have since I was a little boy. So what I seek to do is I seek to bring more and more value based on connections, opportunities, wisdom, insights, capital, all kinds of stuff. So I've spent a lifetime building up, building up value that I can bring tremendous value to, any business I'm a part of. That's how I've done it.
Got it. That makes sense.
Other questions?
So, if a business is not a fit, or I guess, how do you determine if a business is a fit?
So you have the left side and the right side of your brain. Left side, I believe, is the analytic side. Right side is intuitive side. So the left side is where you're going to get, the accountants. Have a really good accountant. And if you don't have a really good accountant, I know a number of them that I've worked with over the years and I would recommend. And so you can reach out to me and I'll give you contact information at the end. Have a really good accountant that can go in and look at. I know a guy who bought a printing company in Louisiana, and he got taken to the cleaners. He just missed some key things that I think a good accountant would have helped to prevent that from happening. You get a good attorney, and again, I've got names of those, and so if you want a good accountant, I can refer those, or a good attorney, I can refer those. Generally speaking, you're going to need somebody with both those areas of expertise. Um, and so um, so the left side is looking at the financials, looking at the financials and saying, okay, so what you're probably going to have to do is you're probably going to have to do something that the current business owner is not doing. Do you know what that is?
Not sure.
So the current owner probably owns the business maybe free and clear, or maybe not, but they're not going to, so if you're buying a business, let's say for $1 million, that business owner is not paying interest on that $1 million.
Right.
And so when you buy the business, you're going to have to, either put your own money in, $1 million of your own money, and you're going to want a return on that, or you're going to have to borrow the money, or you're going to have to get somebody else to invest the money, something. So there's got to be a return on that investment. So if it's $1 million and it's even 8% interest rate, it's $80,000 a year. So you're going to have debt that's going to go ahead and you're going to have, roughly, $7,000 a month in additional debt that the current business owner did not have. So if they go ahead and have, $5,000 a month in profit, but you're going to have $7,000 a month in debt that they didn't have, so you're going to be losing $2,000 a month, and that's not without factoring in you're going to lose 10, 20, 30% of the client base often, maybe more. I know a number of CPAs that have sold their practice, and a guy sold his practice out on the East Coast. Um, really successful guy. And he said, I think it was within, I don't know if it was 4 years, literally 90% of his customers that were bought by these companies had gone to some other company. So, so they bought the business and they lost 80 to 90% of the customers. That sucks. And so that can happen. And so that's where you get into, like we're going to get into, should I have partners? And how do I negotiate buying a business? And what are my funding options? So there'll be some, really great lessons in here in being able to go through it. So one of the 9 companies that I own is Synergy Solutions. On that for 34 years. And, a lot of our clients will call us business coaches or executive coaches, which is fine. But we're really architects or engineers, and we architect and engineer what's called a BOSS system, a business operating system. It's the engine that runs our business. We earn the money we earn, work the hours we work, have the stress and life balance we do or don't have because of that engine. And so when you look at this, so one of the things, and again, this is coming from one of the companies that I own, and so it's called a business life X-ray. So if you're looking at buying a business, I would definitely have one of those done for sure on the business before you buy it, because that will help you to see a whole bunch of things. So when you're buying a business, there's the financials, which is the iceberg above the water, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff underneath the water. And there's different types of assessments. So the business X-ray, and you may pay for it. You may say, "Hey, I'm interested in buying your business. There's a business X-ray I'd like to have done. It's $285. I'm more than happy to pay for it. On your behalf. I'm more than happy to pay for it, and we can go ahead. You can participate in the interview of it. You can participate in the review of it. There's also a leadership X-ray and an executive X-ray. And then there's a team assessment, group assessment, C-level assessment. So the bigger the business, the more feedback that you want to have, on that. The more you want to go ahead and go through and understand it. So there's 3 individual assessments and then 3 team assessments. And so having somebody that can look at it from a business systems perspective. And so you have 5 areas. So a BOSS system consists of, so it's the engine that runs our business. We earn the money we earn, work the hours we work, have the stress and life balance we do or don't have because of the engine in our business. There are 3 components: DNA for people, business, and life. And so there's 5 areas within every business. So you have marketing. How do you generate more and better leads? You have pre-sales. Once you get a lead, what do you do with that lead? You have the sale, that's the yes or the no. You have servicing, how do you create a raving fan experience? And you have client relationships for life. So let's say, just for ease of understanding, let's say it's $1 million business. It could be a $10 million business, could be a $100,000 business, could be a $1 trillion business. It's the same concept. So if you have $1 million business, you might have, 4 out of the 5 pipes, at 5 million in that business. But one of those pipes is at $1 million, you're only going to do $1 million. Or you could have all 5 of those pipes at $1 million. So if you can find a business where, where 4 out of the 5 pipes, is at, maybe 5 million, and one of the pipes is at $1 million. Ooh, that's a good, because there's a lot of the work that's been done already. And so, in being able to go through and have somebody that designs and architects the BOSS system, and they've done it for years, they have the tools, they can give you insights into a business that no accountant, no attorney can ever give you. So it's good to have somebody like that on your team as well in being able to go through it. Other questions that you have, Luke?
I don't think so. I like the idea of the business that I'm thinking, or that I once was interested in buying out, having them do the business X-ray.
Right? Right? And so it's interesting because, and you when you buy a business, you might buy it, and we'll talk about this in the financing, in a couple podcasts here. What are my funding options, my financing options? And so if you go ahead and buy into a business, like you might go ahead and buy in, and there's something that's called options. So you might go ahead, and when you buy a business, you might buy in and say, here's an option. So I have an option to buy. So I have an option to buy the business for $1 million in 2 or 3 years. And you might pay them $10,000. If you don't exercise the option, you know, to buy it in 3 years for $1 million, then you lose the $10,000 if you don't exercise that option. So there's a whole bunch of different financial instruments, a whole bunch of different ways that you can structure it. Having somebody that understands these ways and that can help you find the right business, but it's not only like Tom Coons. He said, when do you make money on when you buy real estate? It's not when you sell it, it's when you buy it. In a way, that's true with a business too. And so it's not only buying the right business, but it's buying at the right time in the right way for the right price and making sure that you go ahead and you know where that, like what's really generating when that business owner is gone. What are you going to do to go ahead and replace that? Don't underestimate how much that business, like if you have $1 million in sales, there might be relationships or other connections or something where $500,000 of that business is going to go ahead and come with the owner. Like it's going to go away once the owner goes away. So there's a whole bunch of different things. And what's your diversification? Like you want to look at, there's a chart of accounts in accounting, and it looks through, all of your different accounts. And then there's an aging of accounts receivable. So, the 3 college degrees were helpful to me in understanding the different aspects of finance, which is one of the degrees, understanding financial statements. What do they mean? How do they do it? How to do that? But then also the management, because that's going to be really important in buying a business too, is okay, who's going to take over the management? How long is it going to take you to take over it? You're probably a totally different personality than the current manager. So are you going to go and current owner? So are you going to lose people, key people? You lose one key person in a business and they might be a sleeper. You might not even know how critical that person is to that business. You lose one person and the whole business can go down. It's not the business owner. It could be somebody totally different that you don't even realize. So there's a lot of intricacies to this. And then the marketing degree, that helped me to understand different aspects of marketing. And so I'm glad with the 9 businesses that I own, I'm really glad I got my degree, my 3 degrees, because they did help me in a lot of different things. But somebody who has 3 degrees or somebody who's a CPA, they're not training you how to buy businesses. They're not training you how to go ahead and run a business, own a company. They're not training you about those things. They're training you about specific pieces of a business. And it's all of those pieces. And a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Same thing is true in buying a business or running a business. If you have any questions on anything we covered today, feel free to connect with the individual who invited you to participate in today's session, or you can call toll free 888-230-2300, outside the U.S. 630-393-9909. And always remember, we can accomplish so much more together than we ever could on our own. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.